Your Minnesota Vikings now move to 6-2 on the year after beating the Washington Redskins last night. Thursday Night Football final score 19-9. Wasn't pretty, oftentimes tough to look at, but in fairness, Thursday Night Football games are usually a bit sloppy. Like we saw last night was no different. However, if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan and you're looking for some positive takeaways, I have three of them for you. Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, and the defense minus Xavier Rhodes did just enough to stay ahead enough to win that game last night. Kirk Cousins didn't necessarily knock your socks off like he did the previous 3 weeks. So if you started him in your fantasy lineup, I'm so sorry to hear that. But he was still smart with the football, played very efficiently, 23 of 26 of his passing attempts. And I don't remember any. He either made smart right throws to his receivers or he was throwing the football away. I don't remember seeing any goofy errant passes like we saw the first 4 games of the season, and quite honestly his entire career outside of these past 4 games that he has played the best of his career. So he did just enough as a quarterback to win that game last night, even though it wasn't sexy. Dalvin Cook, 171 yards from scrimmage, was absolutely amazing. Take your pick between Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook as far as who you think is the best running back in the league. I don't think there's a wrong answer either or, but Dalvin Cook was the primary factor as far as why the Vikings were able to extend drives, move the chains, chew up clock, put the Vikings in more favorable second and short, third and short downs to have a better chance of converting for first downs. For instance, there was one particular play. The Vikings faced 1st and 20 after a Brian O'Neill holding penalty was called. The immediate play after that, Kirk Cousins threw a screen pass to Dalvin Cook in which he ran up the field for 18 yards. So then it went from 1st and 20 to 2nd and 2. We're talking about 1st and 20 to 2nd and 2. We are not worthy of having Dalvin Cook on this team. He is the most valuable player of the Minnesota Vikings, arguably of the league, although I would give the edge right now to Christian McCaffrey. And the defense, they played outstanding. For the most part, they played pretty well. In addition to that, I'll get to that in just a second. The offensive line, not great. He gave up 3 sacks. Kirk Cousins took 3 sacks yesterday. Brian O'Neill had a rough going last night, which is actually a compliment to him because I swear to God, he's been in the league for a year and a half now. He's played, 20 some odd games up to this point. I don't remember ever, not one time before last night saying, you know what, Brian O'Neill, he didn't really look all that great. He had a bad game. This is the first time that I can recall ever saying that. And according to Troy Aikman during the broadcast last night, Brian O'Neill gave up the first sack of his career. So that's actually a compliment to Brian O'Neill. It was a blip of a game. I'm not worried about him whatsoever. Pat Elflein single-handedly killed at least 3 offensive possessions last night, whether it was due to penalties or to a sack. That sack that he gave up on 3rd down in the red zone was so embarrassing because he stayed in front of his man. He was right there. It's not like he got turned around. He was right there in front of his man. He just couldn't hold him off. The dude, he got absolutely pushed back into Kirk Cousins to where I'm like, dude, you need to work on the sled machines. You need to work on your squats, something like that. Your power cleans, whatever it is. At this point, he needs to be benched for Dakota Dozier or Brett Jones, and I'm good with it because as an offensive lineman, when you single-handedly just kill offensive possessions, that just destroys all the momentum with this team. So luckily, it wasn't against a better team. Luckily, it was against the Washington Redskins, but I'm sorry, man. He's been doing this all season long, and I've been coming up with ways to defend him. I can't do it anymore. He needs to go, whether it's off the team or on the bench, just not on the football field, and I'm good with it. And I didn't necessarily agree with going for it on 4th and 1, a whole 1 yard away, not like 4th and inches. I didn't agree with going for it on 4th and 1 at your own 34-yard line. If anything, I would have challenged the play before that where B.C. Johnson caught a pass from Kirk Cousins. And I thought, based on the camera angle that I saw, I thought B.C. Johnson did just enough to get the tip of the football right down on the 1st down marker. But Mike Zimmer did not challenge it. Instead, you went for it on 4th and 1 at your own 34. Turnover on downs, granted, is the Washington Redskins, Dwayne Haskins. So in hindsight, it's like, okay, fine. But I didn't necessarily agree with that call. I would challenge the play before that. Stefon Diggs caught 7 catches of 7 attempts, or 7 catches out of 7 targets for 143 yards. So just off that stat alone, you're like, that's fantastic. That's amazing. That's what, 3 straight games of 140 yards plus that he's had, if I'm not mistaken. 3 straight weeks he's had. Outstanding. However, last week you had a fumble against Detroit in which luckily it got recovered by Alex Madison. And the same thing happened last night, except this time it got recovered by the defense. Stefon Diggs caught a wide open pass and turned it up the field for at least what I thought was 25 yards before just carelessly fumbling the ball away. I guess dude knocked it out, punched it out of his hands, fumbled the ball away, and just gave all momentum to the Washington Redskins, in which this was the very first possession, by the way, of the Vikings offensive possession. Very promising drive. You fumbled the ball away, gave all momentum to the Washington Redskins, in which I said right away, damn it, okay, primetime Vikings. Why am I surprised by this? Right after that, I immediately looked up all you guys that shared the video in which I said, if the Vikings somehow manage to lose to the Washington Redskins, I will give out a $50 gift card to Liz, to one random person that shared the last video as far as previewing the Vikings-Redskins matchup. And I looked up all the names, and I was putting it in the simulator. Here's the random one that gets selected. I was like, all right, who's going to win the gift card, damn it? But luckily, things got turned around when the defense saved Stefon Diggs' ass, which brings up the double R play of the game.
And now on first down, Keenum keeps, ball's out. Recovered by the Vikings as the two sides trade turnovers.
Okay, so this is the double R play of the game for a couple of reasons. Number one, we just talked about Stefon Diggs gave the ball away to the Washington Redskins. Case Keenum and the Redskins, they were moving the ball up the field to where the Redskins then decided to say, you know what, let's have our tight end, number 88, go one-on-one with Danielle Hunter. What type of dumbass coaching is that? You're really going to have a tight end with no help, no chip blocking, no additional help, not double teaming him or nothing. One-on-one, a tight end, one-on-one with Danielle Hunter. You were asking for that strip sack fumble in which Danielle Hunter got, in which we then recovered and got the ball back for the Vikings offense. That was outstanding, and we recaptured the momentum that we lost on that first offensive possession of the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings defense saved Stefon Diggs' ass, in which case I said Stefon Diggs owes Danielle Hunter him a 46,000-acre mansion out in Beverly Hills immediately. But luckily, we were able to get the ball back, and that is why that particular play is the double R play of the game. On defense, we had a couple of standouts, Everson Griffin and Anthony Barr. They both combined on 1 sack total for a half a sack each. They both combined on 1 sack. I think it was on Dwayne Haskins, if I'm not mistaken, after Case Keenum went down for a concussion, was ruled out for the rest of the game. Everson Griffin in particular, the play that stood out to me, he made a tackle out in the flat on second down, a passing down. So this wasn't a screen pass. This was a regular ass, a receiver run. I don't remember who caught the pass, but this was a regular ass, run your route, I'll throw you the ball. And a defensive lineman, Everson Griffin, made a tackle out there in the flat when no one else was able to do it, preventing the first down. I can't remember on 3rd and short if the Redskins converted. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, especially if Xavier Rhodes was on the field. I'll get to him in just a second. But Everson Griffin making that play, that was pretty outstanding stuff. Speaking of passing downs, Eric Kendricks had a key pass breakup on 3rd down in the red zone, in which the Redskins were threatening to score a touchdown. Instead, that pass breakup that he had made the Redskins settle for a field goal instead. Eric Kendricks is having one of the best years of a Vikings linebacker that I have ever seen since following this team since 2000. So almost 20 years that I've been following this team. Anthony Harris also had an interception in which Dwayne Haskins had a bit of an overthrow in which the ball tipped off of Terry McLaurin's hands, and then it just fell into the lap of Anthony Harris coming down with the football. And then we get to Xavier Rhodes with yet again another shitty performance. And I hope, Mike Zimmer, I hope that you are watching this. First of all, Xavier Rhodes, I'm glad that he cleared concussion protocol. I'm glad that he's okay. I never wish injuries or anything on anybody. As a human being, as a man, I am glad to see that Xavier Rhodes is okay. But in terms of being a football player, in terms of being a Minnesota Vikings, in terms of being a professional cornerback in the National Football League, Mike Zimmer, I hope you're watching this. Hi, Coach. Big fan of yours. it has gotten to the point now. Actually, not even that, because it's been this way for a couple of weeks now. Xavier Rhodes needs to be benched forever. He needs to never see the football field again. He does not need to ever play on the football field for the rest of this season. You can't sit here and tell me, you cannot sit here and justify, coach, why Xavier Rhodes should be on the field ahead of guys like Trey Waynes, ahead of guys like Mackenzie Alexander, Mike Hughes. Even when he returns going into Arrowhead after he serves his 8-game suspension, Xavier Rhodes doesn't deserve to be on the field ahead of guys like Holton Hill, who I don't trust at all, whether smoking weed or whatever the hell he can do to get suspended. I don't trust him at all. And quite honestly, in the preseason, Holton Hill was awful. But I will take all the garbage that comes along with Holton Hill and the potential upside with Holton Hill, because he was actually pretty good last year. Holton Hill was. You can't sit here and tell me that Xavier Rhodes deserves to be on the field ahead of any of those 4 cornerbacks. He is the worst cornerback on this team, one of the worst cornerbacks in the league. And forget the fact that you brought him back last year after I said you should trade this dude, because last year he was terrible. Somehow he's even worse this year. Forget the fact that you brought him back this year on a $13.3 million cap hit. Forget the fact that you even played him out on the field week after week after week after being some straight up shit. Of all people to guard yesterday, you could have put him on Trey Quinn. You could have put him on Paul Richardson. Instead, you had the nerve to line up Xavier Rhodes on Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin diced and sliced up Xavier Rhodes all game long, in which Case Keenum decided to throw. He was not afraid. These quarterbacks are no longer afraid. You remember there was a point in time in which, oh no, we're not throwing in Xavier Rhodes' direction. We are throwing in the direction of Trey Waynes, because we are avoiding Rhodes close, baby. Quarterbacks are now no longer afraid to throw at Xavier Rhodes. So when I saw early in the game, to start the game, that Rhodes was on McLaurin, I said, all right, you're asking for big plays to happen, and that's exactly what happened. That was so... Watching Xavier Rhodes supposedly play cornerback in the NFL is so embarrassing, because at this point, he couldn't cover odor if he used a Febreze spray bottle. He is absolutely terrible. And now, if you continue to put Xavier Rhodes, because actions speak louder than words, if you continue to put Xavier Rhodes out there on the field and you don't bench him from this point moving forward, then that is you. Your actions are telling us. Because now, this is an insult to the whole fan base of the Minnesota Vikings. If you continue to put Xavier Rhodes out there on the field, that is you saying as a head coach that you value loyalty. You value loyalty to your players over winning football games. There is no reason for him to be playing. There's no reason for him to be on this roster. If you're going to have him on the roster, he needs to be benched. The only reason he needs to be on the football field is because somebody got hurt. That is it. But as far as being a starting cornerback in this league, the jig is up. It is absolutely over. Mark my words, Xavier Rhodes, if you continue to play him, he will cost this team a game. Just like Blair Walsh cost the team a game, a win against the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs in 2016. Much like Daniel Carlson last year due to Rick Spielman, he cost the Minnesota Vikings a win against the Green Bay Packers last year at Lambeau Field. Mark my words, this year you continue to play him, he will cost this team a game, and then it will be your responsibility, coach, to get up front and center on the podium and explain why you keep doing this crap. He does not need to play anymore. He needs to be benched forever, because as a cornerback in the National Football League, I'm glad as a human being, I'm sure he's a great guy, and I'm glad that he cleared concussion protocol. I don't wish any injuries or anything like that on anybody. I'm glad to hear that he's okay. I genuinely do mean that. But as a cornerback in the National Football League, Xavier Rhodes has been some hot-ass shit, and there's no other way of slicing it. We do this 3 times a week, Mediocre at Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. Check me out on Twitter at realistic_Randy, Facebook at Realistic Randy. We'll see you next week.